Hey, it's Andy Yanez, and you're listening to another episode of Let's Rage Coogs, presented by Hoop and Holler and Star Pizza. Joining me from Go Coogs, Ryan Monsell. I got it. I got it. I got it right.
With the kids dab now. Is that what they do? Yeah.
Well, hopefully, we wish this was on a happier note. Houston falls in their regular season finale. They,
AAC finale ever.
yeah, last time ever in the American Athletic Conference in that conference schedule, but it came to an end. They fell to Tulsa 37-30. Right before we get into any specifics, I'll just toss it over to you. What were your thoughts of the game and the disappointing finish to
I
a
was very
disappointing
excited
season?
about today, Andy. I thought this went really well for the University of Houston and its fans, the dozens of people that showed up tonight. Um, I don't understand how you can lose to three private schools in your league. You nearly lost to a fourth in Rice. This team starts over next year. The quarterback leaves, your best receiver leaves. You get Alta McCaskill back, but well, I mean, where do you go? There's a lot you're losing. A lot on the defensive line. Your senior linebacker. You start with Sam Houston and Rice and UTSA, and then Tulsa or TCU's in there. It could get ugly. I mean, you're going to beat Sam Houston. You're probably going to beat Rice. We're maybe going to beat UTSA, but where do you go? But before you get to that, you just went 7-5. You're supposed to be a New Year's Six team. You're supposed to be a New Year's Six team, Andy. And you go 7-5. You're going to end up in Frisco or Fort Worth or Shreveport or who knows. It's unacceptable. And we'll see if Chris Pesman forces any decisions on this football program. You've got to make changes. And I don't think you make changes just to say, we made these changes. You make changes because things are broken. Offense looked great against some really terrible teams. You lost to Tulsa, but your 5 wins in the conference are way down at the bottom. They're not the teams at the top. UCF, Tulane, Cincinnati. You didn't beat any of them. You didn't beat SMU. You're beating the bottom dwellers. Well, there's no these teams in the Big 12. There's just not. Kansas is the worst team, and they creamed you. You can't compete with Kansas State where they're at now, TCU where they're at now, Texas, Baylor. You didn't beat Texas Tech. Where do you go? And U of H had over 500 yards tonight. U of H got a punt return for a touchdown and still only scored 30 points. Still lost. There's just, it shouldn't happen. And besides the punt return, special teams were absolute garbage. You had a 12-yard punt. You missed a field goal. I don't understand what was going on in the returns in the first half. You kept switching out between Dell and Jace Rogers on punt return. Okay, why? It just doesn't seem like there was any rhythm, anything that made sense. Why you're returning it from the end zone. And the defense, they got gashed. The 1 week respite, the 1 week where everything was fine with the defense, that wasn't real. You know, SMU isn't real. Like, that's not who you are, but you're also not the team that gave up only 3 points. There's a lot of offense in the Big 12, and I mean, I don't understand where you go from here. Was that long enough? Was that good? Is that
That was
okay?
perfect.
Okay.
That was
I'm a little
perfect.
red-faced right now. That's not a metaphor. It's just
But so when you start with changes, and like you said, there's so many areas where you don't even know where to start. And I think Well, I guess we'll start with the defense because that's been the unit that just fell off a cliff from where it was a season ago. And really, if there's someone that's going to be the fall guy, and I know you made a great point about the offense, they were able to make a good run against bottom of the barrel defenses.
Terrible.
But the defense outside of that East Carolina game last week
Terrible.
were atrocious.
118 defense before ECU, I think. It's not going to you're going to be over 100. That's not good. You get quarterback pressure, you get tackles for loss, but then you get whooped on the corners. It doesn't make any sense that this defensive line can be as good as they are and then just get beat outside. I don't know where you go with this defense. I don't know what kind of changes you make. Dana's very loyal to certain guys, his guys. And that's fine. You've got to be loyal to your people. But something has to change. Your record last year was built on beating bad teams. Your record this year is built on beating bad teams. Those teams don't exist in the Big 12. You could be a 2 or 3 win team next year. You could go, I don't think you go over, but you could win one game. You could go 1-8. And I don't think the solution, I see it in Twitter, I see it on these comments. The solution's not to fire Dana. That's not happening. You can't keep going back to Tillman Fertitta and saying, "Oh, we'll just pay for this one other thing. Just pay for it." Just ain't happening. This is not. But there have to be changes. I don't think it's the Belk. I think you depend on him for recruiting, such as it is, and you trusted him enough to give him a 2-year deal or 3-year, whatever it is. I don't know where the changes come from. I don't even know if there's anybody in the department that can force these changes. But something has to. Something has to give. Eat Star Pizza.
I mean, that's a perfect segue for our 2 sponsors to today's episode of Let's Rage Coogs. Hoop and Holler, the Houston Cougars Sports Micro Collective. They are the entity behind those Star Pizza commercials. And it's going to be a good thing because I guess that the very slim positive that there was to this game, the defensive line, they had 3 sacks. They had 8 tackles for loss. And DeAnthony Jones had his sack, who he's the one that starts.
He had a sack down at this end zone. He had a sack down at that end zone. He was not credited for the first one. He wasn't credited for one last week and wasn't credited one, I think, against SMU. We got to start crediting people for their sacks. Back to you, Andy.
Well, as I just gave a shout out to Star Pizza and Hoop Holler for being sponsors. They were sponsors for the entire football regular season. So we, like you said, we still have 1 game left with whatever bowl game Houston ends up playing. But I think kind of wind down, and we're going to toss it over to Dana Holgorsen in a second. But we were both in that post-game conference, and it was a bit of something that he's repeated all season long. You know, we weren't prepared. We got out-coached. We got outplayed.
He said the other team wanted it more. And he said the same thing. It meant more to the opponent. It meant more to Tulsa. He said the same thing about SMU. He said the same thing about Tulane. Well, why does it mean more to them? You get the same opportunities. Why does that mean more? It should mean just as much, more, because it's your guys. And if you're able to say so often, we got outcoached, well, that's a problem. We got outplayed. They wanted it more. Well, besides coaching and playing and wanting it more, what else is there? Segue.
Wow.
Dana.
I mean, that's a perfect segue because I'm going to toss it over to Houston Cougars football head coach Dana Holgorsen, post-game, final regular season post-game show. His clipper. Here's what he had to say.
You know, just disappointing end to a hard-fought disappointing season, obviously. Didn't meet expectations. Thought we had enough left in the tank to win this last one and finish 6-2 and tied for second, which isn't the goal, but I thought it was obtainable. We got outcoached, we got outplayed. Give Tulsa credit. You've seen that a lot this year. This is the 45th time that we've played. The series been back and forth, and it meant a lot to them. So I give them credit. They did a better job of getting their guys ready to play.
First question right here.
Dana, was it a matter of, you go from last week to this week, was it just a matter of things you just run out of gas? It's late in the year, the guys are hurt.
Yeah, I think that's just reality with what 2022 is in the season. Just it's been hard fought. I love this team. They're hurt in there right now because they care. We prepped the right way. We just didn't get it done. Not going into details as far as why we're out of gas or whatever it is. It's just it's a hard fought year. This ball didn't bounce our way. But we were resilient and we didn't quit. And I'm proud of the fact that we didn't quit. And we just kept fighting, and I thought we could get this win and finish, winning 6 of the last 7 and putting ourselves in a position where we could, at least hope, keep our head high and be proud of how we finished, and we just couldn't do it. I'm just very disappointed. The players are disappointed. The coaches are disappointed that we didn't finish it the way that we wanted to.
Dana, earlier in the week you talked about just all the senior class had gone through. What was sort of your message to them after, this disappointing way to end the season?
I'm sorry. Didn't get done. Didn't finish it the way that we wanted to. It's all we talked about all week. Doing what you got to do to finish it the right way. It's all we talked about. And just didn't make enough plays. Gave up too much.
You just kind of what happened on offense.
Yeah, they were. We knew that they were going to do that. They played a bend, don't break defense, dropped 8. And we got to be patient. It gets harder the more condensed the space becomes in the red zone, the harder it becomes. And we've been really good this year at executing in the red zone with touchdowns. We didn't execute worth crap in the red zone when it came to scoring touchdowns. Is that the difference in the game? Yeah, probably. We moved the ball, but when we get down there, we gotta punch it in, and we didn't. It says that we're 4 or 5, but one field goal, 2 field goals. I don't remember what it was. We didn't score touchdowns, and that sucks. That's one of the keys of the game, and we didn't do a good enough job.
A couple more questions.
Dana, I want to get your thoughts on how you feel the defense performed against Tulsa.
I think we win as a team, we lose as a team. We didn't play good enough as a team. That we got some stops. We didn't tackle great. We're allergic to turnovers. But then offensively, I can sit there and complain about a lot of stuff like I just did in the red zone, not being able to score touchdowns. So we didn't play good enough as a team.
So once again, that was Houston Cougars head coach Dana Holgorsen following Houston's 37-30 loss to Tulsa in the regular season finale. I want to jump right into that point where he said, obviously a disappointing season, a disappointing end to season where they didn't get to meet their expectations. That in and of itself, in just that comment, it was a change from what he said just a couple of weeks ago. He was asked directly about, they had just qualified, they had become bowl eligible after the win. I believe it was against South Florida, and he talked about what expectations that were put by others outside of the program, which that in and of itself, we talked about it. It was the players themselves. They said they wanted to do what they failed short of last season, which was get to the American Athletic Conference Championship game, what they achieved last season, but this time win it. And they fell short of that. Tank Dell mentioned it himself. They didn't come really anywhere close to that American Athletic Conference championship game. And I know that there was a slim chance. There was really no hope, especially in regards to once UCF won, that hope was lost. But Houston really had no realistic shot at being able to make that conference championship. And it certainly was a very major fall from what they were all talking about when it came to the summer, the training camp. So it's good to hear that Dana Holgorsen acknowledged it, but the problem is, yeah, what are you going to do about it?
Number one, you don't do that fawning ESPN profile in August if you don't have expectations.
Yeah.
You don't come out and say, I don't care what people think, if you don't think you're going to do a lot of stuff to where you don't have to care what people think. And obviously every team has expectations. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. That's fine. But to come out and say we don't have expectations to your fans, it's insulting. And it's happened in a lot of different ways this year. Oh, we can't run the offense that way anymore. Well, that's all they've done in the last 3 or 4 weeks. You ran it a lot, I think, against Temple, but otherwise, SMU, East Carolina this week, it was spread them out and throw it around, which is great. That's what people want. That's why when Dana came here at the end of the 2017 season, that's what people are excited about. They thought you were getting Case Keenum and Pat Edwards and Tyrone Carey. They thought you were getting that offense. Well, you're not. You don't have those guys. And the game has changed. It has evolved, but you can still throw it around. I mean, plenty of people are still doing that. Expectations are important, and I think you have to have them, and you have to embrace them and tell your fans, look, we have expectations. We have expectations to do this and this and this, and we failed. He talks a lot about, I'm so proud we tried hard. You don't get paid $4 million a year to try hard. It's just not what happens. It's not what anybody here cares for. That's great. I mean, it's cool that you tried against Tulsa. You got to be better than just we tried. And I get frustrated hearing those things because I wouldn't accept them in my personal life or in business or anything else. Will the people above him, the people that fire coaches that go 8-4, what they go 7-5, do those people finally demand change? Do they demand better? We'll see.
That's the perfect segue, because on that topic of those higher ups that do make those decisions, this is just the whole night has been just one big, I would keep it PG. It's been a crapshoot for this program and this team. The way the game ended, post game, it was the altercation with Sam Brown.
Haven't talked about that.
Which we're about to, because in regards to Chris Pesman, so the TV camera, or I guess the ESPN crew, caught Sam Brown with a Tulsa player, and I don't know exactly who it was, but he ended up slapping the Tulsa player. Dana Holgorsen wasn't aware of it until Joseph Duarte of the Houston Chronicle asked him about it, and he flat out said, I haven't seen it. No one on our staff is aware of it. So they get made aware of it. The athletic director, I guess the vice president for athletics, Chris Pesman, he tweets out an apology, and I guess you're trying to pull it up right now. I'm trying to get it.
So he tweeted out the statement that says, we're going to look into this, which is the basic thing you do when you don't have an answer. And somebody told me this, that when you put your phone into CarPlay, for some reason it takes a screenshot of the song that you're listening to. And he was listening to a song, and I've never heard of this song, What's Your Fire? And that's kind of weird, but he deleted it. That's fine, whatever. But there's no answers, and that's fine. Do it tomorrow. I understand. It's midnight. I should have been in bed 4 hours ago. But it's emblematic of what this program is. And you walk 250 yards that way, and there's a program built on culture. There's a program built on expectation, living up to the expectation, and a coach that says pretty plainly, if we don't live up to our expectations and your expectations, we'll tell you about it and we'll fix it. And they pretty much do. And it's so hard to go from covering that to covering this because there's a huge disconnect. And football coaches and ADs talk about alignment a lot. The football coach, the AD, the president all have to be aligned. Well, so do the basketball coach and the AD and the president. And I don't understand how this football program and this basketball program can both be aligned. Obviously, they're not. And obviously, there's a big issue with where this football program is. That's all I got, Andy. Back to you.
Well, I think the difference in between where the programs are, it lies in that incident with Sam Brown in and of itself. Because you're never going to see a player on the men's basketball team go up and slap someone else. And I think
We had a biting incident a couple of years ago. Remember in Cincinnati?
you did.
And the coaches were not. They didn't think that happened. And once they found out, within 24 hours, they held him accountable. And the way that Kelvin Sampson dealt with that, he pretty much challenged, I think it was Dayon. Dayon, I'm sorry. Damn it. Whoops. Star Pizza.
Well, we're on YouTube.
Yeah. But, he made a big deal out of it. And guess what? It got fixed. It got fixed immediately. And it was such an isolated incident that you can overlook it. Right now in this program, the isolated incident is 12-2 because everything else looks the same. 12-2 is the outlier. And that's where the real problem is. Are we raging?
We're raging.
Okay.
And but here's the thing when it comes to the microcosm, because that's a great point where you mentioned that 12-2, that's the outlier. And like you mentioned at the top of the show, is going to be the final year in the American Athletic Conference. Now they're stepping up a game. Now the biggest thing, and this is from my perspective, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Throughout this entire season, whenever things didn't go well, even starting when they lost to Texas Tech, when they lost to Kansas, because that was, I know whenever it happened, and what a coincidence that they had Brett Yormark visit kind of sandwiched somewhere in between there. But when they lost to Tech and they lost to Kansas, the thing that Dana Holgorsen would say during his post-game availabilities, and even, he had to apologize after when it came to his weekly Monday press conferences. But there would be times where he said, hey, that shows that we're at a gap, we're at a difference, and we have to get better, we have to recruit better, which even if it's true, I feel like
It's true.
Oh, absolutely, it's true.
It's true.
But how if you were a current player for the current staff and you hear that this season, that doesn't necessarily instill confidence in Holgorsen. Well, at least you would think. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Well, there shouldn't be confidence. What are you confident in? Dana comes out and says every week that we prepared the right way. Okay, where? How is that preparing the right way? You look gangbusters in the first half. And at halftime, Tulsa made adjustments. You didn't. Tulsa didn't do a ton on offense in the second half, but they didn't need to. They did enough. You got down there. You went for it on 4th and 6 at the 21. What's that about? I don't understand going for it on 4th and 6. If it's 4th and 3 or 4th and 4, the numbers say that's doable. 4th and 6 is a whole different thing. It's not a long field goal, and that field goal changes the way the rest of the game happens. My thing is there should be no confidence. And again, going back to across the street, if there if Kelvin Sampson has a problem with the way you play, he talks about it with you, but he also talks about it in public. He talks about it with the media. He puts the pressure on you. You need to change. We're doing this my way. We're doing it the same way I've done it for 34 years. You have to change. And he does it a lot to freshmen and sometimes some guys in sophomore, junior years, but he's never saying that about seniors because those guys know what they're supposed to do and it's been beaten into them. This team, I don't know. And they're getting a bowl game, and I'm very thankful that the fans are only subjected to this one more time.
Oh man, we're raging, but again, to that point you made about the culture, it's something that Kelvin Sampson always talks about. Regardless of who the player is, they don't care if it's a 5-star or if it's a transfer or anyone. It's the phrase that he says, "You're going to submit to our culture." The problem with the football team right now, and this is year 4 under Dana Holgorsen, they don't really have that type of identity. Like what when you think of this version of the Houston Cougars under Dana Holgorsen, what's their identity? You don't really. There's nothing that comes to mind specific.
Sorry, I had a word. I had a word that came to mind. From week to week for 4 years, I've not known what to expect. Over there, I know what to expect. Today was an aberration. They didn't have it. The entire team had been sick all week, but they still won. This team, who expected last week? Nobody. Not the coaches, not the players, not anybody watching this. SMU, who expected to score 66 and lose? Nobody. Who expected to give up the most points ever in school history? Nobody. You just don't know what to expect. You play UTSA in this close game in 100 overtimes, and then you go do it the same thing against Texas Tech. You're not going to look good the third week. It's just the way college football is. And you didn't. But then you look bad against Rice. You look bad against Tulane. You look bad, you look bad, you look bad. You played 7 one-score games this year. That's weird. And you played some last year too. But East Carolina, SMU, both here. It's just they never get up. You always play down to the guys you're playing against. And I guess that would be my identity for this program, is that you just try to do enough instead of to excel, to be the absolute best. And Kelvin Sampson has ruined a generation of Cougar fans because they're going to expect too much now. And that is a blessing and it's a curse. And for this right here, it's certainly the curse.
And even to the point you said today was a bit of an aberration for the men's basketball team. But even then, they still had their identity. They had their calling card. They won because they were able to defend. For as bad of a shooting night that they had, Kent State shot worse. And they out-rebounded them. They got 23 rebounds. And a big reason why Judge Walker didn't play a lot of minutes is because he wasn't, like we mentioned earlier, he wasn't doing what Kelvin Sampson wanted, particularly when it came to that rebounding. One thought that comes into my mind, it was one rebound that it looked like Jarris could have gotten. He wasn't able to track it down. Kent State got it. It bought them an extra possession, and Sampson was furious. He immediately put in Reggie Chaney. And again, that goes to the accountability standpoint. Now, you've been around the football program and even going when Sampson first took over. This is Dana Holgorsen's 4th year. When it was Sampson's 4th year, that would have put him at around the 2018, 2019. Exactly. There was already that blueprint of, one, they already had the identity of that blue collar mindset mentality, but 2, you were starting to see the building blocks of, really the early building blocks of where they are now, and you haven't really seen that with the football team.
You haven't seen it in recruiting. You haven't seen it in on-the-field product. You haven't seen it in growing what you can do. And some of that is understandable and can be accepted if you market your program. People at U of H don't like when you talk about Tom Herman. They don't like that name. They don't like what it connotes. But what it did is a fierce energy around the program. It created excitement, it built hype, and then they lived up to the hype. And those two teams, even though the second year people think that it was just this horrible year, won 9 games, there was just so much more to the program. And we can go into 1,000 different ways it's different. But this program is not moving forward. It's not, there's no building blocks. It's not stacking on top of each other. It's just one displaced effort after another. We made a little step and then we're going to go crap the bed against Rice or get blown out by Kansas or lose to SMU and Tulane and Tulsa for the first time, all three in the same year. It just, if you're getting blown out by Texas and Texas A&M and LSU, that's one thing. But you're losing games to SMU and Tulane and Tulsa. And great, it was only 20 points between the three. Fine, whatever. You lost. And you don't pay a guy $4 million. And you don't give him huge security to achieve so little.
That's the great point, because that's been the question of really heading into off season. It's something I'm a plug in our other show, Folks Talking Sports, which Chris, if you're listening to this playback, by the way, before I do give the shout out, I do want to spotlight Hoop and Holler, the Houston Cougars Sports Micro Collective, for being at one of 2 sponsors on the show, and obviously, of course, Star Pizza, Houston's best pizza since 1976. Have you gotten some Star Pizza? What is it Houston's best pizza since 1976?
Well, I was born in 79, so I can't vouch for the first 3 years, but I liked it, for quite a while. I like that location on Shepherd. They got the new one over there on Washington. That's fine. That's great. But that Shepherd one, that's got some grit, and it's got hot rice girls. And so that's the one that I choose to go to. Is it getting darker?
They
I think
just
a
shut out
couple
the
of
lights.
left. Uh-oh.
They're trying to get us to get the heck out. We're still here.
I'm not leaving. We're 4.5 hours past my bedtime. I'm going all night. I don't know. Did we tell them this, that we went in the locker room and I found a half-drink bottle of Red Bull and I just chugged it. And that's why I've got all this energy and I'm ready to rage.
Well, the Red Bull, we might need some Red Bull. Those Wi-Fi at TDC Stadium certainly needs some Red Bull. Once again, I do want to acknowledge that the reason we were delayed, we were originally planning to stream at 11 p.m. We're planning to rage at 11, but we had technical difficulties. For some reason, the Ethernet connections weren't working even inside at TDC Stadium. So if you are watching the show, we've had a pretty decent live turnout. And judging from the comments, you guys can hear us. Hopefully that the stream has been able to be maintained, and we appreciate all of you guys that have been able to stick with us. But I'm going to look at some of the comments.
And you look at the comments. You have a brand, Rage. You need to use that. Not stream, Rage. Rage.
That's Rage. We're going to
Okay, yeah. I need to get a little more rage right here.
Well, we're going to start.
You need to do this another 15 or 20 years to really get that churn, or have lived through Dana Dimmel and Major Applewhite as both an offensive coordinator and head coach. That, and then Tony Levine. Love Tony Levine as a person. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll see where I am 5 years from now, 10 years. Maybe there'll be a lot of rage built up and stored up.
You're still sitting to my right at Fertitta and my left at TDCU, in 10 years, and you get this sort of rage.
Yeah, I mean that's
I'm raging.
I'm gonna start getting red. We're gonna have more Red Bulls. But anyways, I'm looking at some of the comments, and what I want to say, everybody's and this has been something that's been brought up not just tonight, but just before, and in particular, is Dana Holgorsen the right guy to lead Houston to victory? Now, they said there's not going to be a change. That's not realistic. You can't fire Dana Holgorsen for two reasons. One, like you alluded to, giving him that contract extension after last season. And what I was going to mention before, the plugs on Folks Talking Sports, Chris Garner has mentioned in the past, that seems such like a short-sighted decision after, granted, the first 2019, I guess you can make the argument, you can chuck it out the window because you had the whole Eric King redshirt fiasco.
Brought on by yourself, but whatever. Yeah,
That season,
that's a whole new rage.
just add on to the rage. But they finished 4-8. It is what it is. The first year. Second year, COVID. They have the first 6 games of the season canceled or postponed.
Yeah.
They lose to a ranked BYU team. They finished 3-5. They were bowl eligible, but that season was ravaged by COVID. They didn't start until October, and then in November they had a random pause because they got hit by COVID.
Yeah, you can't hold that season against anybody,
Mhm.
and I don't. But again, build, and there's no building. Even if you were ravaged by COVID, you still were practicing. You were still working. You may not have been playing the games, but you're still working. And no one else is getting that lanyap, that extra. Dana shouldn't get that. On the contract extension, he had language in his contract about the Big 12, about a good faith negotiation. And that's fine. Did they maybe give him too much on the years? Maybe. But he's not going anywhere, and I won't even have the conversation because it's useless. It's like talking about the scenarios which U of H could have made it in the conference champ. It's useless because it's not happening. And mathematically, they're both possible, maybe, but it's not happening. So
In regards to that point and the hype, so like the extension, they gave him multiple more years to stick around. But the question here that's been asked is if he's the right guy. There's just a lot of questions if he's the right guy to lead him into the Big 12 now.
there's two separate things. Is he staying and is he the right guy? And one can be yes, and one can be, I still don't know. And he's talked a lot about changes are coming. And he hasn't wanted to talk about them because the season was happening. Well, they're in a dead period now. They can't go on the road recruiting. They can't do anything through the championship games. Perfect. It's time to assess. And it's time to make decisions. And at this point, you've got to make them public. You've got to tell your fan base what it is you're going to do, what it is the plan is. And do I expect that? No. But I think it's going to happen because I think the people that matter, and it ain't you and me, and it ain't the people watching, but the people that matter are probably pretty pissed off. And they're probably tired of watching this. And I think you have seen a quietness from Reno Couture, and I think something's going to happen in the background. Can't promise it, but that's just my gut feeling.
That's a great point because when it comes to Renu Couture specifically, we haven't really heard of her since they had, honestly, since they had the extension, they were going to continue to name TDECU Stadium. That's the last time I remember she was out in public, at least when it relates to athletics and specifically at least the football landscape. So that's a great point. But I think if you can't fire Dana, that's where all the eyeballs go, is the administration. And okay, what if you're not going to fire him? Are you going to set expectations that, okay, we're heading into the Big 12. Renu Couture and Chris Pesman have both said, and they said it whenever they announced the naming rights to TDC Stadium, their goal is not to go into the Big 12 just to celebrate. Yeah, congratulations, we're finally Power 5. Renu Couture specifically, she said they want Houston to compete once they get there, and specifically compete when it comes to football, because, I mean, let's be honest, that's where the money revolves around. It's college football. If you have a good college football program, that's going to bring a lot of success to the university as a whole. So now the eyeballs turn to them. You alluded to it. We fire coaches at 8-4, where they finished 7-5. So at best they can do 8-5. That's going to be worse than they alluded to, and that's kind of come back to that comment in and of itself has come back resurfaced lately, but in particular because of just the frustration. That's really the main thing, the frustration around this season. A lot of people are gonna, like you mentioned, especially when it comes to whoever may be raging with us on us Rage Coogs. I'm gonna start marketing that will be watching. All these fans are gonna be looking at the admin and say, okay, if you don't fire them, are there gonna be what exactly will be the reaction? Because I feel like you said, there's been a lot of quietness around this season, especially once things went south after the Kansas game, and you gotta say something.
Yeah. For better or for worse, Chris Pesman is not an interview guy. He's not a make a statement guy. He's not he's just not going to do anything to step out of line. He comes from his career in the past has been kind of in the background in facilities and things like that. He was an operations director here. He just operates in a different way than what a lot of fans would want. And I think he's got to make an effort to connect with the fans, to start showing that they hear and they're going to be proactive. This football team is not marketed. It's not marketed by the head coach. It's not, you can market it within the U of H community, but that only goes so far. It's just like asking for dollars from the same people over and over and over again. Well, it just becomes an echo chamber. You've got to market it citywide. And back to Tom Herman, that's what he did better than anyone. Kelvin Sampson markets his team by winning, by competing at the very highest level. And if that's how you want to market it, that's perfectly fine by me, but you've got to get there, and you're nowhere close. If you can't do that, you've got to be active in the community. You've got to be accessible. You've got to open your program up to let the people in whatever way that happens. I go to basketball practice 3 times a week. I see 2 games a week. Even before I'm doing NIL stuff, I'm around the program 4 or 5 days a week. I'm getting access to players. I went Friday to practice, and I didn't know who to talk to because they'd heard from 2 guys in the game Sunday, heard from 2 guys at practice Tuesday, heard from Kelvin on Friday. I mean, who do you talk to? Because you talk to kind of everybody that played at Oregon. So who do you talk to? It's almost too much access. This program is the complete opposite. 10 minutes, 15 minutes with the head coach on Mondays, a Zoom on Tuesday with the defensive coordinator and 3 players, and then 10 minutes after a game. And that's not access. That's not helping people understand what's going on. If you've seen the Zooms, you see that there's 2 or 3 players that dug about, and you see Holgorsen on Monday. Well, what do you see stories from you, from the Chronicle, from the Daily Cougar? You see what Dana talked about Monday, what Belt talked about Tuesday, what the players talked about Tuesday, and because there is nothing else. And with the basketball program, you interviewed Kellen Sampson for 5 or 8 minutes the other night. Where does that happen? And is this some big ultra plan thing that you did? No, you said, hey, Kellen, can I talk to you? And he's like, yeah, let's go. That's the kind of thing that this program needs. Now, it needs to win more than anything else, and it needs to recruit, and it needs to excite people. After 12-2, your fan base expanded this way, but it didn't get deeper. And after that Texas Tech loss, it evaporated. And then Kansas was way worse. Who's going to be excited going into next year? Are you going to be outdrawn? You're going to play Texas and Texas Tech at home. Are you going to be outdrawn by those two programs? I don't think you're going to be outdrawn by TCU. But there's no excitement around the program, and that has to build. Back to basketball. The thing that I was most impressed with today was that holiday crowd. You are holiday weekend, big crowd. In the second half, it was 80 to 90% full, which just doesn't happen a ton, and it certainly doesn't happen on a holiday. That is because of what you've built and sustained. Now, it's also a little bit because you're number 2 in the country, and a win, everybody thinks you're going to number 1. But again, that's what you've built and sustained. That's your marketing of the program. And you just need a lot of that. I'm raging a lot. I got a lot to say. And we're going to do this until 4 a.m. I'm just letting you know right now. I don't plan.
We're not going to
Star
4
Pizza
a.m.
till 4 a.m.
We need to get some Star Pizza catering,
They're
but
going to turn the lights off.
they're
cleaning. They're fine. We're good.
we still got a few minutes left. Once again, those of you that just may be tuning in or wherever you may be listening to the audio only, or even if you're watching the replay on the Houston Raw Ball Review YouTube channel, big shout out to Hoop and Holler, the Houston Cougars, Sports Micro Collective, and Star Pizza, Houston's best pizza since 1976. We could really use some pizza right now. Once again, the final score, Houston in the regular season finale falls to Tulsa 37-30 to fall to 7-5 on the season, 5-3 against the American Athletic Conference opponents. Now, this is something that I've seen, and Henry Sandoval, he's brought up this, and I'm gonna toss it over to you because you're I guess, the resident name, image, and likeness expert for this show. Here's what Henry Sandoval had to say. He said, "Crazy idea, but can we give big money NIL deals to the new recruiting class in regards to football?" I'll just let you take it away.
You can't, in the state of Texas, you cannot give any NIL money to high school athletes. They have to be on campus. A good example is the recruit they just signed in basketball, Lot, right? That's his name, Lot. So he's coming in January. We can't do anything until the day he enrolls in classes and shows up to classes. 10 minutes after he shows up to class, we can do anything we want, NIL-wise. But before that moment, no, you can't. And you're not even supposed to promise people. You're not supposed to. Obviously, that happens. It's not going to happen with us because we're going to follow the rules. There's too many eyeballs. There's too many people. And I'm not going to do that. And I don't think Landon's going to do that. And certainly Star Pizza since 1976 and Hoop and Hardball. I'm not going to do that. You can do this the right way. You can, once you start building NIL and doing more with players and having it more exposed and recruits seeing that, that's how you're going to get it moving. You can't give it to them, but you can say to them, and the coaches can say, look what's happening. Look what we're doing. Mattress Mack's giving $1 million. These guys are doing this. Free pizza, free this, whatever. That can start to build. And it's not going to get you 5 stars like Jarris Walker. You're going to have to get that on your own. But one of the biggest things in NIL is the wandering eye, because guys aren't just looking for more playing time or a better situation. They're looking for the NIL too. And that's what teams are. It used to be negative recruiting. Now we have more NIL. We have more opportunities. And that's the part where U of H is going to win or lose in NIL is, can you keep your guys, the guys you recruit, the guys that you get on campus, can you keep them? Kellen Sampson told me a few weeks ago that once you sign a guy, the number one thing is development, and the number two thing is retention. And you don't want to develop a guy and then he goes to another program. You don't want to do that. So the way to keep him is you win, you develop him, you keep making him better, and he sees that it's the coaches that are making him better. And you find a way for the NIL to work on the back end. And so with recruits, it's more about them seeing the opportunities that are here. And if you can show them that and then piece it together with, we're the best coaching staff for you, we're the best situation for you, Big 12, big city, that's the way to win in NIL. Does that make sense? Do you like that one?
Absolutely, and Henry Sandoval. It'll be in the audio only version. It'll be on Time Gem or wherever you get it. And Henry Sandoval says, thank you for the insight in regard to name, image, and likeness deals. It's certainly, something I didn't know.
You should go to hounil.com. You should support any of them any way you can. You know what we do. It's content. It's finding ways to build the brand and to show the personality of players. And it's been awesome. And the guys are awesome. And the women we're working with are awesome. But it has to keep building. There has to be a next level. And it starts $20 at a time. It doesn't start, this isn't Quinn Ewers, this isn't Bijan, it's not $1 million deals. It's $20 at a time. This fan and this fan and this fan, and we all build something together. And it's just like this show and the Pod Slam and Jam. You didn't hit a button and 1 million people appeared. You worked and you grinded and you kept building and building and building. And that's the exact same way with NIL. It's going to be a little harder. It's going to be a little more work. But in the end of the day, it's so worth it. And to build something like you're building and to build something like we're building, it's so much fun. And there's a lot of people that want it to be a competition versus me, us versus Lincoln Cougs. It's not. We do different things. I don't want to do what you do. You probably don't want to do what I do. And I don't want to do what Lincoln Cougs does. I don't have the patience for building those big $1 million relationships. Not me. But I'm really good at the content piece and I'm really good at the ideas. And I can do this. I can't do that. And you do this. And I do this. And it's not competition. And if somebody goes and reads your article and they don't read mine, okay, maybe tomorrow it changes. That's fine. We're all still going to eat. We're all still going to be fine. You're still going to sit next to me to the right at Fertitta, to the left at TDECU. But it's not going to change anything. That's just my opinion.
And at the end of the day, it's all getting more exposure to the University of Houston Cougar athletes, which is a great point. Now we're transition as we start to wrap things up. We're not going to go until 4 a.m. because I think some of our viewers, it might be
private stream, and we're going to go to 4 a.m.
He's not joking. He's got a setup. Once again, I do want to reiterate that we do thank you that.
See, you could look like that. How bad that looks.
I hope that we haven't, and I'm guessing that we don't look that atrocious because we have been able to maintain a consistent audience throughout, which is a sign that at the very least people can hear us and they have been interacting. So that's the positive.
Are they raging? Does it look like rage over there?
The comments. Henry has been active. I don't know if they've been raging. Sam Venena said, "Man, the basketball team, that program is so bad. I can't say it because we do have sponsors. We do have something to maintain. But if you are watching the YouTube version, be sure to read his full uncensored comment. But it doesn't look like we have that much rage. We had some rage because we kept delaying the show postponement. We did have some rage in that aspect. It was the Wi-Fi. We had technical difficulties again, it just kind of, it really was encapsulated what kind of a night it was for the football program. What I was going to transition to, I do want to get to some positives, which after this game, it's hard to pull some, but I think in particular, you got to start with Tank Dell, because I think something that got overshadowed just with the way the game went out. You mentioned it, special teams. Overall, they had a really terrible night. That they got, the 12-yard punt by Lane, that probably just sealed the deal in regards to special teams. But he did have, I'm talking about Tank. He did have the punt return touchdown, the first punt return touchdown for Houston since going back to last season when they played Navy early on in the season. That was Marcus Jones who did it a season ago. He had a touchdown. It seems like he's become automatic with his stat line. He's going to have, he had 9 catches. He had 169 yards. He had, no, I'm looking at the wrong. He had 9 catches, 161 yards, and 1 touchdown.
Santiago, right?
That was Juan Carlos Santana, who, by the way, look at that. Juan Carlos Santana, that sounds like a baseball player to me. He's ready to hit home runs, but he was killing the Cougars with touchdowns. And they really could have he could have had 3 because he dropped the touchdown. So he could
only had 6 catches. I think he had
I
can't read that because my eyes are terrible.
He had 6 catches for 169 yards.
Is what I last saw.
Which is correct. And he had 2 touchdowns.
That's not good. But that's hitting him in his helmet, in his hands. There are a lot of drops in this game. You're going to see the stats. It doesn't show that many drops. I think UH only is credited. Choose you up, but there were a lot more drops than that. But Tank Dell, it's going to get overlooked, and it's going to get overlooked for a while. But he had a monster year. 100 catches, 16 touchdowns, I believe, and turned it on. But he didn't catch a touchdown?
He caught 1 today, but that was his 15.
Wait, then he had a
Oh, the punt return. Oh, yeah. I guess he caught.
Well, we'll count touchdowns, Andy.
I thought you were talking about
No, catch and touchdown, or total touchdowns, not catch, but total touchdowns. He wanted 15. He's at 16. He's the one guy that can say, I hit my metrics. I hit my accomplishments. I wanted to do this. I did it. Massive yards, massive catches, massive touchdowns. Got the special teams touchdown. Runs free all day. It makes no sense how he's open all the time. He could have made 1 or 2 more in the second half. Could it have made the difference in the game? Yes. But he's not the reason you lost. And you can point to 30 different things, but he did miss 2. He dropped 2, but he's not the reason. He did his part.
In regards to the future, he was asked after the game, he made a decision, said he didn't want to comment on it. He wanted to keep it private, but just...
He said he had more thinking to do. He had decisions to make, and I respect the hell out of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he was honest with you, but he also didn't say something in the spur of the moment with just everything going on. I got to think about that. Let me figure it out. And he's got a lot. There's a lot to weigh. Your future career, plus even here, what's the offense look like? What's the quarterback situation look like? What and what's the best fit for me? And you've got to have discussions with position coach, with head coach, with coordinator, with family, and whatever. And he's really good. And one of the few guys around this program since 2016, since Greg Ward left, one of the few guys that you can say that guy got all he could out of his career if it's ending now. Derek Parrish, you can say that about. I think DeAnthony Jones, you can say that about. There's not a lot more.
One of the other players, quarterback Clayton Tune, his final home game as the Houston Cougars, it was not as, it kind of came to, it's not the ending you would have imagined that would be. Especially with the first half he put together, because
Monster
Houston's
first half.
offense, he had threw for 256 passing yards in the first half. He had 2 touchdowns. And then, like you said, adjustments by Tulsa, they completely shut down Houston's offense. I think before they had that final drive, Clayton Tune had only thrown 66 passing yards overall in that second half, which was a night and day difference from what he did in the first half. He had that really bad interception where he was running out of time. Tulsa defenders were pounding him, and he still decided he tried to threaten the needle.
Well, it's fourth down. And so it was 4th and 6 from the 21. He threw it. The worst thing that happens there is it's incomplete. If they catch it in the end zone, which they did, they lost a yard. I mean, it is not a big deal, but that isn't going to kill you. And no issue with throwing that ball. I don't love the decision to go for it on 4th down, but I don't think it's so egregious that you focus on it. I didn't like it. Dana said he didn't regret it. All right.
He said it was their philosophy.
Well, I understand it's your philosophy, but even if something is your philosophy, it doesn't make it right in every situation. And in that moment, was it right? I don't know. You missed a field goal. You missed a couple of field goals in the last few weeks. It's been kind of iffy. If you're tentative because of that, I get it. But it changes the dynamic of the rest of the game, and not in a good way.
Just overall, in terms of what Clayton Tune has been able to do as a Houston Cougar, how do you feel? And potentially he still has one more game left. I don't know if we'll get into whether he decides to play in a bowl game or not. That's still yet to be determined. But just overall, what he's been able to do overall, he had that growth. He spoke on it. You mentioned the Zoom meetings during the week. He talked about, he didn't really have a very first joint here. He didn't have good performances 18, 19, 20. And then, in 2021, he opened with a terrible performance against Texas Tech, where I believe he threw 4 interceptions in that game. But then being able to shake that off, turn around, and he put together a strong 2021. I know this season didn't after that Memphis game, in that fourth quarter of that Memphis game, the offense and team themselves, they were playing at a different level for the rest of the way when they ended this season. How do you feel Tune's overall career will be remembered?
I think a lot of historians tell you you can't judge a presidency immediately. You've got to give it some time and let it simmer and then kind of come back to it. And I think Clayton Tune is that way. Like Greg Gord, you understood he was special and you knew it in the time. And Case Keenum is the same way. Other quarterbacks, Clayton, he never won a title. Case didn't either. He didn't have those signature wins. And numbers are fine. Numbers are good. But it matters a hell of a lot more if they come because you're piling up wins. And part of that is the schedule. The schedule doesn't give him the opportunity for big wins. I just think it needs some time to marinate and see how it all shakes out. I will say that the first time we really saw him was 2017 at the end of that year, coming in against Tulane and then at Memphis and then Army with the 10 sacks. From who that guy was. And then even fast forward in the next year when he comes in, he starts at North Texas. That is a completely different quarterback. Now, he's got more weapons now, but it's not like there's so many weapons that it makes it like Case Keenum, who just had to throw the ball up in the air and all these great athletes were going to find it. But I don't think he's at the top echelon. I don't know if it's the second or the third. He's somewhere. But there's just not those signature wins to say I can determine, what I think your legacy is. Not yet.
Oh, no, that's a great point. And once again, in the Final Four, Tulsa defeats Houston in the regular season. 37-30, dropping Houston to 7-5, 5-3 against the American Athletic Conference opponents. Overall, 26-47. passing completion. He had 386 total passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He didn't take 2 sacks off the bench. He did have that 1 interception. Tank Dell, these are correct stats. I'm not looking at Juan Carlos Santana. He had 9 catches for 161 yards.
How many targets did he have?
He had 17 targets. In this
17
game,
targets.
which
He
is-
caught 9.
Yes, he caught 9.
I think that's his worst percentage this year.
And he had a few drops.
Yeah, he had a couple drops, but I think that's you can't put every target on the receiver. You just can't. But he did have some drops. Still a great game, but the numbers mask some issues late. But that you can say that about a lot of situations in this game and with this team.
The rushing yard, Tajon Henry.
Look up here, buddy. Look up here.
Tajon Henry led our rushes with 54 net yards. I'm looking at it again. It's just been a
Nobody ran the ball tonight.
No, they did not. Certainly not. It's not even Clayton Tune when he had few rounds, but he was quickly sliding down. A lot of times, and Dana talked about it. A lot of it was how Tulsa defended them, where they were dropping it, and really they were going to force Houston to go on long drives.
Well, a lot of teams have been doing that. They've been dropping 8, and he was successful against a few of them, and successful tonight for a little while. But you just didn't have the run game, and you had some drops, and that makes a huge difference.
We'll see what bowl game they draw. It was disappointing end to a disappointing season. That's kind of along the lines of Dana Holgorsen said. I know a lot of people are going to agree with that statement. Sammy Villena said, losing this game made me rage like losing to Melania Blade of Michaela. I'm not sure the reference to that, but he's raging. So he's part of the Let's Rage.
Because I don't get that either.
Steven Henderson, I'm raging as well. So you do have a whole bunch of.
We're going to build this brand, this raging brand.
We're going to start raging and screaming now. Our next Let's Rage Coogs, so this is the final regular season football game. We will be back for whatever bowl game they do, whoever that opponent is in December. But we will be back for Let's Rage Coogs presented by the Saxenian family. He is sponsoring the next 29 now basketball post-game shows of the.
Do you know who the next opponent is?
Yes, it is Norfolk State.
And what is their mascot?
I do not know.
Oh, I see.
But they will play Tuesday, 7 p.m.
Yeah.
inside of the Fertitta Center. So that's going to be our next Let's Reach Coogs.
Are you going to St. Mary's? Are you going to Fort Worth?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know their mascot?
St. Mary's. I don't really know their mascot.
Apparently. I think they're the Gales. I could be completely wrong. I think they're the Gales.
To be honest, whenever we saw, or when I saw Penn State, I didn't know that there were golden flashes until I saw tape.
Golden flashes, yeah.
Which is an interesting mascot. It was a lot of golden because then the football team turned around and played the Golden Hurricane. I know all the mascots for the American Athletic Conference.
Okay. And I bet you got the Big 12.
Yeah, most.
Okay. Most of them? Yeah.
But once again, I do like to thank you for being able to hop on and being able to speak for over an hour, even despite the technical.
God, you talk so much.
Despite the technical difficulties, despite all the, really a lot to rage about in regards to the football team, it was a good show, and hopefully we have multiple screens. Hopefully it doesn't look like that when we go back and see. But if we did it, thank you guys for who were able to stick around and at the very least listen to us. And if you're watching replay or the audio-only version podcast of Let's Reach Coogs on Postgame, wherever you get your podcast on Apple, Spotify, anywhere else where you may be listening. Thank you so much. And like I said, we'll be back Tuesday. Any final word?
If you're listening to the audio only, Andy and I are both 6'3" and built.
Wow.
Okay.
Built.
Yeah.
On that note, we'll end it out once again. The final score: Houston.
You're gonna ask for a seat change, aren't you? You're not gonna sit next to me anymore.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll make it work. Houston falls to Tulsa 37-30, falling to 7-5, on the season 5-3 against American Athletic Conference opponents, and that is a bid farewell to the final American Athletic Conference schedule for this time until the Houston Cougars football team will never play another conference like in the American Athletic Conference next season will be the Big 12. So thank you guys for joining
You know,
us.
the last game of the Southwest Conference, U of H played Rice, and they called it the turning out the lights, and they had like a big light switch, and they turned out the lights, and they just turned out the lights on the American in not a very pretty way.
Not at all. But we'll have a bowl game, so we'll see. We'll see if they can close
Yeah.
out that. Yeah, on a positive note. Once again,
If they lose that, I'm raging again.
hopefully we'll have better signal and better Wi-Fi, but we'll stay tuned. Whoever they face, wherever they play, hopefully it is not that bad of a bowl game. Although they did play the Birmingham.
Well, there's no good bowl games in the American. You get the New Year's Six, or you get total crap, and you're halfway down the total crap list. So it's not going to be what you want.
On that note, we'll see you through then. Go Cougs.
Rage.
We'll all rage. GM Project.